Boom.
We're missing our Yamato. I think we win.
Just punch mogged him. Oh, now he brings out the curse.
I have a refresher. I'm looking for a big ult.
Punching Mo. Just bullied him.
Careful on the guy stunned me very far. I'm gonna teleport over, but I promise I'll be there in 20
Ah,
seconds.
she's so cooked. Come here. She's fine, she's got him, and dead. Are you tired of all your puddle punches getting parried? Well, you're in the right place, because today I'm going to teach you how to not get parried with Puddle Punch Viscous, as well as a whole bunch of other tips for the Puddle Punch playstyle, which is something that I have been playing a ton in my Deadlock career. I'm somewhat of a Goo main myself, and well, I have my own Viscous build as you can see here. Puddle Punch Viscous is really, really good if you know how to play it. It's a sort of utility/damage focused playstyle where you're trying to displace the enemies as much as possible and put them in the worst position they can possibly be in, while also dealing a pretty good amount of damage too. Sure, one Puddle Punch is not going to be doing as much damage as a splatter, but you have a lot of Puddle Punches at your disposal, especially after the buff. But the main problem with the Puddle Punch is just that it's really hard to use. I mean, first of all, you can just flat out miss the Puddle Punch. It's kind of an awkward ability to aim with, and also the enemies can just flat out parry it like that, negating all the damage. And if they buy a rebuttal, well, they will return that damage right back to you. I just took 47 damage from Eternus. So, yeah, how do you get better at using the Puddle Punch? And furthermore, what are some cool tricks that you can do to use the Puddle Punch more effectively as a movement ability? Well, first of all, let's take a look at some things you can do with your build. So if you're playing a pure Puddle Punch build such as this, then you have a lot of options for scaling the damage, like weapon damage from opening rounds and point blank, as well as melee charge, which will amplify the damage of your Puddle Punch with the tier 3, which makes it now do heavy melee damage. And the Puddle Punch will actually gain the benefit from point blank regardless of whether you're actually next to the enemies or not. And this is because it uses the center of the Puddle Punch as the tracking tool for whether point blank should apply. So point blank will always increase the damage of your Puddle Punch. It is literally just 50% extra damage for free. Well, not quite 50% because of how melee scaling works, but you get the idea. And also, the Puddle Punch will give you a lot of lifesteal thanks to the tier 2 upgrade, which gives you 60% lifesteal, but it's still not a terrible idea to get Lifestrike because of how consistent this is. Whenever I play Puddle Punch Viscous, Lifestrike does actually end up still being a pretty big component of my overall healing, and it also gives you 16% melee damage, which is a lot bigger than it sounds compared to the 50% from point blank. Listen, melee damage scaling is weird, but trust me, this is very nice, especially because it also stacks a 60% movement speed slow on the Puddle Punch, which stacks with the 30% slow on the Puddle Punch. So these guys get slowed down immensely. If I go ahead and buy Lifestrike and then just use it on this guy here, yeah, he's walking pretty slow. Look at how slow he is. That is absolutely massive. But the two most core items for making the Puddle Punch more consistent are Rapid Recharge, and then Mystic Expansion, and later, either Ballistic Enchantment if you want to double down on the Puddle Punch, or Greater Expansion if you want an even bigger Puddle Punch and you also want to affect your other abilities. These two items, well, you cannot understate their importance. Take a look at the cooldown of the Puddle Punch here. At tier 3, it's 6 seconds. 6! That's hardly anything. And you have 4 charges of them that you can spam back to back to back to back. And look at how big this Puddle Punch is with just a single Mystic Expansion, and that is thanks to the tier 2 range upgrade, which gives you 1.5 extra meters of radius with which to scale your percent-based modifier here. So usually just the range increase from Mystic Expansion alone is enough to make these big enough to hit. But yeah, you get even more with Ballistic Enchantment, you get 2% extra, and with Greater Expansion, look at how big this is. That's huge! And if you want to go really overboard and make these nigh unmissable, then you can stack all of these, although, I mean, this is just... It's ridiculous, but it's also a little redundant. Like, okay, if you're somehow missing without the ballistic enchantment here, like, you kind of have skill issue. But yeah, without these two upgrades on the Puddle Punch and without greater expansion, all of a sudden, yeah, these Puddle Punches are a lot smaller and a lot harder to hit, and this is why you even see me missing a lot of Puddle Punches on lane, because, yeah, these are a lot trickier to land. And the range also helps you do stuff like what I showed in the intro clip here, where you can actually just hit people, you know, even without seeing them. As long as you are able to understand where their movement is going, you can place a Puddle Punch in the general direction of where they're moving, and that will hit them, and it will really, royally mess them up. But let's get into the real meat and potatoes of actually landing this ability without getting parried, and while also putting the enemies in a terrible place that they don't want to be. So Viscous actually gives you some very helpful hints on how to use this ability in his voice lines when he says stuff like, "I'm Trixie," and "Time for stealth," and stuff like that. Surprise! Oh, it would have been great if he said that just then. But yeah, he sometimes just says surprise when he uses this ability. And that's exactly how you have to use it. If the enemies are paying attention to you and they know that you are in the vicinity, the chance of you getting parried goes up by so much. And that's another reason why it's really hard to use Puddle Punch in the laning stage of the game, because it's just you and your lane partner versus the same two enemies. They are totally mentally prepared to parry your Puddle Punch. So it's when the enemies aren't expecting it that you want to throw these Puddle Punches out. So you want to try and invade on fights that are already taking place, or catch the enemies off guard when they think nobody is watching. And when that happens, they will be completely flustered. When this Puddle Punch comes, they won't be able to parry it, and then the fact that they just got thrown wildly out of position means that they are actually a little bit less likely to parry the subsequent Puddle Punches too, because the element of surprise is very powerful. You can also time Puddle Punches for when the enemies are channeling an ability. So, Moe and Krill, for example, when he's in Burrow, he can't parry you. And that means you can punch him wherever you want. And there are also some other channeled abilities that will allow the enemies to parry, but doing so will interrupt the channel. So, for example, Yamato's Power Slash, Bebop's ult, McGinnis's ult, a lot of the channeled ultimates in this game, you can parry during them, but you'll have to stop using the ult. And so, when you Puddle Punch someone during those abilities, it forces them to either get displaced horribly out of position, or, well, they have to cancel their ult. And so either way, you get huge value out of the Puddle Punch during that. So try to identify enemies on the enemy team that have channeled abilities, and target your Puddle Punches on them when they use those. And furthermore, if you can place it in a direction where the enemies aren't looking, like behind them, then that is even better, because, well, then they have to react to it by audio cue alone. And while plenty of good Eternus players do that, it is, again, much harder when you have the element of surprise, or in the middle of a team fight where they're paying attention to so many other sound cues around them that they aren't directly listening for the sound of the Puddle Punch. But there is a lot more that goes into the positioning of the Puddle Punch than just, I don't know, putting it behind somebody, because you want to try and use it to take the enemies where they really do not want to go, and you have to anticipate where they're trying to go in the first place. And this requires you to be pretty familiar and comfortable with the map of New York, and that comes with a lot of time and experience. But it's important to look out for certain features that you can try to put a Puddle Punch on, and you can get really crafty with this. So let's say this Eternus is right here on the Guardian. There are a bunch of places that I can try to punch him from, and it depends on which cover he's trying to go to. For example, this cover back here is a very common hiding spot for a lot of people. You can try to put a Puddle Punch on the trash can there, or on this right here to try and punch them against the wall and get a little bit of damage on them. Or if you don't want him to go there, well, of course you can put a Puddle Punch on this wall right here. But another thing that a lot of people don't really look out for is this wall right here, this slanted wall. You can actually put a Puddle Punch right there, put him back there, and then you can actually juggle him by putting a second Puddle Punch on this wall right here, and that'll send him right up here, which is definitely not where he wants to be. And if you want to continue juggling him, you can put another Puddle Punch there. He got a little bit stuck. Actually, why is he getting stuck there? That's kind of strange. Okay, don't worry about that. But then you could just, you know, send him this way, and then send him this way, and then he gets stuck again. Let's just kill him, put him out of his misery. There you go. If you're able to think about how you can chain the enemies with Puddle Punch after Puddle Punch, then you will get a lot more bang for your buck out of this ability. And you can just keep on juggling the enemies in a bunch of different ways. So you can try to go to, you know, the explore map like this and just bounce the enemies around and see how far you can juggle them. Learn the distance judgment of the Puddle Punch, because the Puddle Punch will go out to about there, as you can see. And this is another reason why range items are so important, because if I don't have the greater expansion item here, I can't Puddle Punch that Eternus who's in the exact same position there, but if I get greater expansion, boom, all of a sudden, juggling him becomes that much more effective. And another thing you can do with the Puddle Punch is simply look up. You can actually deploy the Puddle Punch on the skybox, which is very weird, but people have known about this for a really long time, and Yoshi hasn't taken it out of the game, so yeah, I would just say this is pretty much an intended feature. Like, if they wanted it gone, they would have removed it a very long time ago. So you can actually Puddle Punch people down from the rooftop, and people really do not expect this, especially the first time you do it to them. So if there is a pesky Vindicta, Grey Talon, 7 ult, anything like that, you can really mess them up like this. And even if they remove Skybox Puddle Punches, there are still a lot of really tall towers in this game that you can Puddle Punch from. And, yeah, just look up with these, because people tend not to look up as much, but it is very helpful to hit someone out of the sky with this. The next technique actually involves using the Goo Ball, because the hallmark of any good melee build is the ability to guarantee melees on the enemy. For example, Abrams can stun enemies with his shoulder charge, and then wind up that heavy melee and slap them. And Viscous, well, he kind of does the same thing, just a lot gooier. So in your Goo Ball, you can throw a Puddle Punch down right as you stun somebody, and chances are they will not be able to parry it, because, duh, they're stunned. And even if the stun timing doesn't quite work out, you know, they're still pretty messed up by the stun. The chances of getting parried here are very, very slim, and the Goo Ball will just help you hit a bunch of these Puddle Punches. And so this is good regardless of what build you're playing, but again, if you are playing a melee build, the punches are going to do a lot more damage, and so this will be a lot more effective. And it also, you know, gives you a little bit of a movement boost, but sometimes that movement boost can be a detriment if you don't want to fly that far past the enemies. Other times it can be very helpful. Regardless, it will give you more opportunities to stun the enemies. Oh, and while we're on the topic of melee tech that you can do with the Goo Ball, there's actually a really simple and effective tech you can do where you just activate the Goo Ball, and then while you're channeling it, quickly cast a heavy melee. And you will dash forward like this, and you'll do a heavy melee while also stunning them with the Goo Ball. And that is a very effective way to get a bunch of extra damage, and also a little bit of a movement speed boost when you start the Goo Ball, at least for that initial heavy melee dash phase. Another thing that's important to keep in mind is teammates. So sometimes you do want to Puddle Punch your teammates, other times they will yell at you, verbally assault you for punching them because you really mess them up. So you need to be careful with how you use this. Let's start off with the good way of using the Puddle Punch. So if you need to save somebody with your cube, try and look for the nearest wall and just bounce them like that to safety. It is a very surefire way to get them out in what is otherwise a very tricky ability, because it makes them stationary, and sometimes they will even slide down a slope, as you saw there. And so you just put them in there, slap a Puddle Punch on them, boom, they get out perfectly scot-free. But what you want to avoid doing is accidentally Puddle Punching your teammates when they're trying to chase an enemy, or Puddle Punching them into a very bad position. You won't be able to avoid this 100%, but try to make sure that you're casting Puddle Punches in a way where you are only hitting the enemies, or if you're really, really concerned that it's going to mess up your team more than your enemies, just don't throw the Puddle Punch. Sometimes holding your punches is better than actually throwing one out. But let's talk about moving yourself around the map. There are a bunch of ways you can use the Puddle Punch for that. This is one of the best movement abilities in the game, but it does require some good, quick thinking and practice. You can use it to fly through the skies and quickly change directions, or just navigate on over to whatever lane you want. Hey, look, I'm at the rift now. And if you have more stamina, that will definitely help you out with using the Puddle Punch. One of the most fun things to do in this game is get Stamina Mastery, and then just fly through the streets of New York with this thing. Although Stamina Mastery is not required, and in some cases it actually feels redundant, because you're spending 3,200 souls on a movement item, when your movement is already really good. But once again, this requires really good map knowledge, and it requires you to train your brain to look for spots that you can Puddle Punch from to get away. So if I want to move in this direction, I need to find a surface that I can quickly attach a Puddle Punch to in the opposite direction, just like that. And that is kind of the crux of the Puddle Punch. But then there are also some ways it interacts with the stamina system, like you just saw me do there, where you can get even more mileage out of your Puddle Punch. So if I just Puddle Punch myself normally, you know, I go a short distance, but it's nothing super crazy. If I go ahead and jump, and then maybe slide a little bit, I will go a little bit farther. But where you really start to fly through the skies is when you combine it with either a double jump or a dash. So if I double jump, all of a sudden I just went way higher and way farther, and I'll be able to continue my slide like that. And that is great, especially for vertical mobility. But if I want to go farther horizontally, woo! Look at how far I just went by putting down the Puddle Punch and then dashing immediately after. It basically just stacks your momentum like that. But the dash Puddle Punch is not always a good thing, because in this situation, if I want to traverse the bridge, well, I could put a Puddle Punch there, but then if I dash, I'll just slam right into the wall. If I double jump instead, I clear that and I easily make it over here. But again, the Puddle Punch is really good for verticality. You can, oh yeah, make it up there just like that. If you double jump after putting a Puddle Punch directly on the ground, like this. Bam! And then you can combo that with a wall jump, and you can get right up here, or basically to any other high ground in the game. And so what I really recommend doing is going to the Explore map here, and just seeing what you can get away with, and where you can go. Try to find different routes to certain map objectives, like that Puddle Punch rollout I just did to get up to the bridge buff. And now I've got a casting buff, hooray! You can also fall off of the bridge like that, and do a double jump with a Puddle Punch to fly over there, and then bounce your way off of this bridge, and you can just try to keep the momentum going. And try not to fight the current with Puddle Punches, because, well, they will send you very violently in one direction, and if you try to, like, go backwards like that, it's gonna be a little weird, and you're just going to slow yourself down. And in a real, you know, situation where you're trying to run from the enemies or outmaneuvering them, the last thing you want is to basically be standing still like that. That's not really something you want to do. And so if they put you in a weird position, or your Puddle Punch puts you in a weird position, try to focus on recovering in the direction that the Puddle Punch sent you. And in tighter spaces like this, the Puddle Punch can be a little harder to use, and so that's where you need to, again, practice and try to find out where it's appropriate to use a single jump, a double jump, or a dash to try and cover the most grounds. Like there, a dash is not appropriate. That's where I'd want to use a double jump rollout. But in these larger open stretches, well, I can more comfortably get away, ooh, with a dash like that, and we can continue chaining our momentum with the slide, and all of a sudden we're in the mid-boss pit, just like that. That is incredible. There is another very strange tech that, well, once again, it's been known about for a very long time, and the devs have not removed it from the game, so yeah, it's probably fine to use it. And that is the cube slope tech. So when you're on a slope, you slide down the slope during the cube. But the game engine completely fakes this momentum, and it'll actually continue using this momentum if the last thing you were on is a slope. So if I am on this slope right here, and I just double jump into the air and cube, look at what my cube just did. I was mid-air, and it still sent me over there. So what I can end up doing here is I can Puddle Punch roll out and use the cube to gain an incredible amount of distance and speed. And there are a lot of places where you can use such a tech to slam yourself into a pillar. And you can use it to do some funky turns too. So like right here, I'm on a slope that's facing this way. So if I do this, look at that, I got like magnetized to the side. And it's a tech that is much more difficult to practice and much more niche because you have to be around a slope, and some of these slopes just don't have great places for you to actually roll out from, although that, whoo, that right there is a pretty good rollout, and there are a lot of other places just like that. So this is another tech that you can keep in mind if you want to get more bang for your buck out of your puddle punches and you have a cube handy. And this is much easier to do if you have a lot of cooldown reduction on the cube. If your cube is still at 40 seconds, I might save the cube for just, you know, actually saving myself rather than using it as a movement tool. But with the tier 3, you can do this much more liberally and just send yourself all the way down to the mid-boss pit again. Very nice. And your Goo Ball is another thing that gets a lot of momentum and speed from the Puddle Punch, and you can use it to very quickly traverse the map. Oh, just like that. The Goo Ball is another thing that is a good momentum multiplier, or, you know, just something that helps you carry your momentum forward, similar to a slide or a dash, just like that. Oh, and one more thing you can do is you can, whoa! You can combo a Puddle Punch with a jump pad if you want, which is another insanely fun tech. And you can even do it in weird places like this, because this actually has a little ridge right here, where you can punch yourself in the face. And so if you just line up the Puddle Punch and use that, oh my gosh, I can catapult myself into this building at a rate that doesn't really make sense. Honestly, that's not like a super practical rollout there, but you can get really crafty with some of these other Puddle Punch rollout locations, like this one. Whee! Oh my gosh, dude. I'm going so fast. And the other Puddle Punch location over there as well, the jump pad on this wall. Yeah, you can do the same thing over here. You just want to time it so you get on the jump pad right as the Puddle Punch goes out, and then whoa! Oh, I missed the slope. I'm bad. I'm washed. I'm a chud goo creature. But yeah, that is another neat way that you can use the Puddle Punch to your advantage. But yeah, man, I could parkour around this map for hours with the Puddle Punch, and I could juggle the enemies too, which is just such a fun thing to do in your matches when the Eternuses aren't just breaking. I don't know. I don't know why these guys aren't carrying their momentum sometimes. They just go straight up in the air. That doesn't happen in real matches. It's something weird with the shooting range here, I guess. But yeah, juggling the enemies is one of the most powerful skills you can learn on this character. Manipulating the enemies to go where you want them to go and stay there with the powerful movement slow of the Puddle Punch is absolutely fantastic. And hopefully now you understand how to do that just a little bit better by using the element of surprise, putting Puddle Punches in places where they least expect it, and chaining your Puddle Punches off of terrain to juggle them just like that. And you should also know a bit better how to navigate around the map using the Puddle Punch and various movement techniques to make the world your oyster and just fly. It truly is just freeing to be able to parkour around the map as Viscous like this and go pretty much wherever you want, as long as you have mastered the movement system and placing down these Puddle Punches to go wherever you want. Viscous is one of the fastest characters in the game, and his map presence is really, really good because you can take the Puddle Punch and be across the map in a jiffy. But yeah, if you found this video to be helpful, then of course make sure to drop a like and subscribe down below so you don't miss out on future videos like this from me. And also if you want to see just some raw Viscous gameplay from me too, I have a bunch of videos of those here on the channel, including a bunch of recent stuff regarding the Puddle Punch, whether it's in my live stream VODs or one of the recent videos I uploaded with this beautiful Puddle Punch build that I love so much. I freaking love the Puddle Punch, man. It's one of my favorite abilities in the game, and I figured, hey, why don't I make a guide about this? Because there is a lot of nuance to using this ability and a lot of techniques that you can employ. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.